I was on Twitter the other day, and I was scrolling through. I'm like, something feels a little weird, and it turns out I was on the Snickers page, and I had no idea. I thought I was on my own feed. Hello, and welcome to Fools in Fiction. We are the Fools. In this episode, we are going to talk about consequences in mostly TV shows, but maybe storytelling in general. This is a rare event where I actually have what I think is a concrete thought with examples and all that kind of stuff. So I had Joe.
So
the reason. Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was just saying, you opened this up with, this is going to be about consequences, and I was, super ready to get hit with a baseball bat, and, that's my consequence.
So the reason I was thinking about this is I watched this show called Tales from the Loop recently, and there's I will spoil this show a little bit, but only a little bit, and for Joe, just the extent that you've already been spoiled on it. So this is a show that's an adaptation of a book of paintings by Simon Stålenhag, called Tales from the Loop, and this is episode 2 I had Joe watch, called Transpose. And what happens is there are two high school friends who find this sphere in the woods, and if you get inside of it, then it does a body switch as per all those movies, all those Disney movies, Disney Channel movies.
I was calling it the orb.
The orb, yeah.
It's like a menacing orb, yeah.
So they were like, "Oh, this is fun. Let's live one day in each other's lives," and they do that, and it's a little awkward. And then they get back, and it's like, all right, let's go back. And one of them just doesn't want to and refuses. And things go to shit fairly quickly, and they end up with the more responsible character kind of in this kind of fit going into the orb and through some technical stuff, accidentally switching bodies with a nearby robot. And the other one of the high schoolers is stuck permanently in the first one's body, but doesn't admit to that and just pretends to be the first one for the rest of the episode. But not only the rest of the episode, the rest of the show. And that's the shocking thing to me, because this is an episodic show, right? Like every episode is a different little sci-fi story, some little allegory or something. But this is just the state of things after this episode. And the shocking thing to me especially is that they don't really address it. It's not like they forgot about it. You'll see little hints. You'll see the robot looking after his little brother, just in the background, but the story really never focuses back on them for much time at all. And so I was just thinking about, why was this so shocking? What other shows or just stories in general do this, and what is the effect of it, and what allows this show to do this and kind of get away with this? Because it seemed to me fairly unprecedented that you would have the setup for a one particular episode, but the consequences of that setup last throughout the whole show. What were your reactions, Joe, to that episode?
Well, so first of all, I the ambiance of it was very good. It was an episode without a lot of dialogue, and usually I'm not too keen on that stuff, but I thought it really worked for this. But I watched that and I was like, wow, that was really well put together. It fucking hurt my bones though.
Yeah, it's
just the fact that hold on, my body's trying to burp and have our one burp per recording session.
I'm ready.
Okay, I got it out. I expelled the demon.
Incredible.
All right. Shit.
I just saw one of those,
Oh,
like, what do they call them in scripts? Beat. Just like in parentheses, beat. And then she goes, all right.
Yeah. Um, so my thing is like, it just fucking shocked me that, so the two characters' names are, Jacob and
Jacob,
Danny.
yeah.
And Jacob,
Danny.
yeah, Jacob is the more responsible one.
He's the one who has like a bright
originally
future at this particle accelerator.
Yeah. Is that what the loop is? I kind of assumed, but I was also maybe it's just like a racing thing.
No, they explained it in episode 1 a little bit, but I had Joe skip straight to episode 2, so there's a little bit of context missed.
Which I think it's fine for this. Like, this works as its own standalone thing. But like when they so one of the shots is of Danny in Jacob's body running to the orb and seeing scientists like just fucking dismantling it.
My god, that broke my bones. Like, I was like, oh,
dude,
shit.
I saw that and I was like, fuck.
I felt like unsure for my own future.
I saw that and I was like, wait, they can do that? That's a possible outcome in this world. And so the very end shot is Danny in Jacob's body just like walking out of Jacob's house and seeing Jacob in this like AT-AT Walker looking fucking robot. And he, meaning Jacob in the robot, runs off. First of all, this is a hella hard story to explain, because there's so many different people in the wrong bodies. But secondly, just like, I was so shocked that they were just like, yeah, they're fucked now. Like, there's nothing they can do.
Because this whole time you're watching this episode, you're like it starts off like, I know you said, and I agree, it is kind of this kind of, I love how I said can't kind of twice there. A great speech, Finn. Very cool. This kind of melancholy mood, but it's still like fairly light at the beginning. It's like, oh, maybe they are going to have a fun time doing a body switch. But as it goes on, you're like, wait, how is this going to resolve? How are we going to get back to that place we started out in? And the answer is, it just doesn't. Like, they're just fucked. Which blows my mind.
Oh, I was not ready for it at all. I thought it was like, so to kind of jump into the discussion a bit more. I remember feeling that it felt very like Kafka-esque with the Metamorphosis, where since it's been a while since most of our listeners have probably been in 10th grade English, a dude just wakes up as a bug and there's no going back. He's just a bug. Like, he's fucked.
Fuck.
And I remember thinking about this episode and being like, yeah, where I was just like, man, this went from like fun sci-fi show to Kafka-esque nightmare, just like that.
It kind of reminds me that I have here's the TMI for the episode. I guess we don't normally have TMI. Here's TMI. My what are they called? Temporomandibular joints, which connect my jaw to my skull, do not function properly. And there was a day a few years ago where my jaw. Sorry, what?
Do you have the jaw popping thing too?
Yeah. And it's getting worse.
Okay.
I went to the dentist and they're like, there's nothing we can do. It's just going to get worse forever. But like that feeling, let me stick with my metaphor. So there was one day in a few years ago when I was just sitting there and like my jaw just popped out and I just like couldn't do anything. And I was just like, this has to like go back. Like I like, this was not in the plan. I have to just like, life has to continue as normal, but I like couldn't move my jaw. I'm like, what? And so that, spoiler alert, my jaw did pop back in eventually. But that's what it felt like to see that final shot of, you think, oh, everything's going to get resolved, and then Danny is running back and they're just dismantling the sphere. Like, there was so much kind of mystical importance under the sphere, and now it's just these guys just taking it apart. And it's just like this, oh my god, like, we're never going back to normal, and we are just fucked. Like, this is just how it is. And just kind of that terror is what I felt in that episode.
Yeah, I will say that, like, I don't watch a lot of horror movies, so I usually don't get, like, scared from anything I watch, but there was definitely some, like, existential horror in that episode where I was like, oh god.
Yeah. And keep in mind, this is the second episode of this show, and the first one was not horrific. It was not like that. It was much more, it was, well, I won't spoil it if you're going to end up watching it. But it was a totally different kind of dynamic. So this is the first time in the show we see just like some shit happen. And it happens at other points in the show too. There's a major character death that the whole point of the episode, all that happens in the episode is just this character dies and people are sad. And there's no twist, it's just people being sad. And that's the whole episode. So I was thinking about what is the effect that this creates? And I think that when you have a show that can do this, it kind of gives it a unique ability to impart a hopeful message. That being that when shit happens and stays happened, which is the nature of shit in the real world, you can still kind of continue. Like, life often does go on. At least the story goes on, even if like a particular person dies.
It changes.
It changes, but it goes on. And I was thinking, oh my god, I think that the reason this show is able to access this is because it has this unique relationship to both serialized and episodic storytelling, where so the kind of format of this show is, it's both like very serialized and very episodic, where each episode is totally standalone, does not rely on knowledge of any other episode, but the episodes have the same characters. So I was thinking about other shows that do this, and I was thinking about Doctor Who. Doctor Who, of course, is episodic. Like, you think about, this is the best episode of Doctor Who, and episodes often can stand alone, certainly ones with different writers, but it's still telling you this big story, right? And I realized that there's an analogous kind of like system of loss that they have in it, which is where companions leave. Like, it happens and there's no going back. Like, spoilers for Doctor Who something or other, but Amy and Rory are stuck there, and it's just how it is. But
Fuck,
the thing is,
you didn't have to pick them.
Yeah. But the thing is, that's the serialized nature that Doctor Who has, but because it's episodic, we have to go back to a sense of normal. And so I think my kind of thesis here is, and sorry, I know I've been talking for a while, is this is a really good instance of the medium as the message. That when you have a piece of fiction that is both serialized and episodic, it almost necessarily imparts this kind of shit happens but life goes on sentiment. Because if you have something that's just episodic, like think about Scooby-Doo, nothing can really happen in the grand story unless between shows, like not episodes of the show, but shows themselves. But if you have something that's totally serialized, everyone is always thinking about what's happened in the past, and like people, you can't just jump into it. There's all this context being built up, and therefore people never really move on in serialized works, in totally serialized works. But when you have a combination, you're kind of forced into this expressing this kind of shit happens but life goes on thing. And that was the kind of revelation I had on my walk today. Do you think I'm on the right mark there, Joe, or what are your thoughts?
So I agree. Firstly, I want to go back to the Doctor Who point, because I think that, interestingly enough, what you're saying is correct, but I think that like it works
Interestingly
better in Tales
enough,
from the Loop than Doctor
what I'm
Who.
saying is correct. Sorry. Which is true.
Yeah,
I often say wrong things. Okay,
Finn...
I'm listening to you. I'm listening. That Hank Hill meme. I'm listening.
So like,
sorry, I am listening.
So with Doctor Who, a lot of the stuff that I like about it personally is the episodic nature. So like, H Bomber Guy talks about Doctor Who a bit in his Sherlock video, and he talks about how like early on, like the Doctor isn't necessarily the centerpiece of every story. He's just there. So like Christopher Eccleston is just like, when he plays the Doctor, he has some throwaway lines of like, yeah, I've been around the universe and seen like a lot of really important stuff, but I'm also just some fucking dude interacting with the cast. Whereas Tennant and from then on, it's a lot more like, look at how important the Doctor is as a person. And I promise I'm going somewhere with this, where I think that the real strength of episodic stuff is in present interactions and like the ability to kind of impart something onto a person without having to show it. Whereas serialized stuff is, you have to show everything.
Yeah.
So with episodic things, like, you can get away with saying that the Doctor fought in this war, or that, you know, Scooby and Shaggy solved this mystery by themselves. But with serialized stuff, you can't say that the OA just did something and leave it at that.
Right.
You have to talk about it, which is like, you know, I think that what you're saying with this kind of hybrid does work better with real life, because, you know, I can tell the story of how my good friend tore every tendon in his knee, and I don't have to elaborate on how that happened or why it happened. I can just say, yeah, this happened, and like just move on with stuff. Or I can just be like, oh yeah, like, you know, I don't know, what's some dumb shit that happened? Oh, like I've torn off, I almost tore off the bottom of my foot, but I don't have to like keep dwelling on that.
Right.
So I think this is a good thing in this idea of like this somewhat serialized, somewhat episodic thing relating to real life. Cause like,
yeah, because,
sure, no, go on.
I was just going to say that, I mean, maybe this is a obvious point, but we live in like a very, like, our lives are very serialized and episodic because they're serialized and they're continuous from like consciousness, but they're also episodic because we literally have like cycles and days, and we go like to different places and we have different episodes, right?
Yeah. So I'm going to get a little bit personal and talk about something which I think reinforces this. So when I was in high school, my freshman year of high school, my grandfather passed away, and I mean, I'm not going to get too deep into like what happened, but that was just a big thing for me, because usually when, you know, your family members pass away when you're a little kid is usually your first experience with stuff like that. But this had been my first experience with a loved one passing. And, you know, I wasn't an adult yet, but I was coming into my own. And so I was just like, oh my god, this will be like the defining moment for me. And as I grew up, I continued to have a couple of those, what I thought would be defining moments, and they definitely have stuck with me. And they definitely have changed how I continue to live, but they aren't things that I have to keep coming back on. They aren't things that I wake up and, you know, the first thing I remember is that my grandfather has died. Yeah. And I think that, like, you know, what I do today, which happens to be get very drunk and talk on the podcast, is not influenced by all those background things in a direct, like, line, that it kind of ebbs and flows.
That's a really good kind of analysis of that. I feel that. So I think that when you have this a piece of media that embraces this hybrid of serial and episodic, you kind of, it feels much more lifelike, and it feels much more like the way we experience the world. And something else I was thinking about, if it's good to move on from this kind of little topic here.
No, you can.
Sorry, I feel like the transition there wasn't fantastic. Anyway,
it's fine. It's not like we do this for a living.
Yeah. Also, listeners should know it is 10 p.m. I forgot that Drag Race was happening today, so I canceled on Joe last minute, and so now we're recording this at night. 10 p.m. Friday, and it's going up at 12.
I mean, I'll live.
Anyway, okay. Something else I was thinking about with Tales from the Loop in particular is this genre of short sci-fi stories, like shows like that, like Black Mirror or Love, Death and Robots or The Twilight Zone, are so, like, the genre convention is to be very episodic, right? And so I think that this moment when we realize that it's stuck, we realize that this show is much more serialized than we had expected. And I think that the kind of shock of realizing that the format of the show differs so much from genre conventions plays into the shock of what actually happens in the episode, and kind of invests us into that world. And it, to me, it's a really cool thing. And like, we get to, as the show goes on, we kind of check back in every once in a while with these characters and just see like how they're dealing with the effects of that particular episode, even though they're no longer the focus of the narrative. And I think that it's just a really kind of compassionate way of storytelling that I haven't seen in many other places. And of course, we do see this in, like, Doctor Who, like we were talking about. Supernatural is another example I wrote down. Buffy the Vampire Slayer to a big extent. But the fact that Tales from the Loop is taking a genre that relies on being purely episodic and adding in the serial element is just really interesting and refreshing to me, and is one of the reasons I love the show.
So a really interesting thing that is also like this kind of genre breaking thing is Smallville, which is a fucking monster of a show. It has 10 seasons. And so before Smallville, which is about Superman and him growing up, there wasn't really this idea of showing the backstory, at least on like TV, of certain characters, that like you just jumped in and you went, it's Superman or it's Batman. But Smallville focuses solely on him growing up. And I mean, I won't say it's like the best thing. It went on for a while, so I think it like wore a little bit thin towards the end, but I still think that like one of the reasons I really liked it was because it was so different from what we had seen, where all the Superman movies were just like, man, look at him, he's so good, I can't believe it. And this is just like, yes, Superman like accidentally did some Kryptonian meth and like became a like weird biker version of himself, and it got really angsty, and we're gonna do that for a couple of episodes. And it's also this thing that's very episodic but serialized, where it had some of the seasons were a lot of just like monster of the week kind of things. But then you had like huge things where like characters are getting married and we are introduced to characters that later die and all this kind of shit. So I think that like that not genre change, but like playing with the rules also does a really good job of making something stick in your craw. Because like Teen Titans was one of the first cartoons in the West to have really serious elements in it. And like, Samurai Jack and stuff like that, where they took this idea and completely flipped it on its head. And that's why we remember them. Cause like no one is talking about, I'm just trying to think of like a random cartoon. Like how crazy the early things of Pokemon were. You just watched it because it was Pokemon. But people talk to this day about like how crazy it was that Teen Titans talked about PTSD. So I think genre change.
So I think the moral of the story here
a really
is
big thing for that.
Is you can really have some big impacts and really have add a lot of value into the world by changing up the medium that you're working in and making some risky artistic decisions. It's like whoever said it. I think the medium is the message to a large extent. I don't know who said that, some famous person. But I shit, stuttering nonstop. Here we go. I think that it is. Oh my god! Oh my god! My brain turned off. Oh no! I was about to give the moral of the story, and my brain turned off. I think that it's really cool when stories do something you don't expect, and not like a plot twist, but like when they use the medium in a way that you don't normally anticipate. And in this particular example, we're talking about embracing this kind of episodic serialism can give you this unique access, I think, into dealing with consequences and loss in a way that just serialized or just episodic things often don't have access to. Although just serialized and just episodic things do have their own merits, like Joe was talking about.
I want you to know that the internet has tainted me, because when you said loss, I immediately was just like 4 panels, the lost dot meme was in my head. I was so broken. I was like, oh my god, here it is. This is loss. And I'm like, no, it's a word. Oh, that is at the world, not you.
No, I know. One last thing that I have here in my notes is I think that this might actually be I've been watching a streamer, SethBling, who used to play Minecraft. It got me into Minecraft command blocks, which got me into coding, which got me my current research job, which is determining my future. He is streaming Super Mario Maker 2. And I was there on stream when he found out. So the big new feature in Super Mario Maker 2 is that you can make worlds as opposed to just single levels. And so SethBling was all excited about, oh my god, I'm going to make my own world. It's going to be great. It's going to have a theme. You're going to be able to do all this stuff. And I was there on stream when he heard that items don't carry over between levels in your world. And he was just like devastated. And I felt that too, because and I didn't realize this, but thinking back to playing, I promise this is related, to playing New Super Mario Bros. The thing that made it feel like a continuous narrative was the fact that mostly was the fact that you could carry items over between levels, because you could be like in one level and see an obstacle and be like, oh, I don't know how to do that. Let me like Metroid my way back to a previous level, get the item that you need, and come back to this level, and then I can unlock something. So it makes you feel like you're in this world you can move around in. But when there is nothing saved between levels, you're in a purely episodic narrative. And that makes it feel like you're not in a real world, right? So I think that SethBling's frustration at Super Mario Maker 2, their worlds not having any item transference between levels. I think that frustration is the same. It is because the Super Mario Maker worlds are not embracing this serialized episodicism or episodic serializism. Oh my god, I promise I'm making a good point and I just can't talk. And also I know I might be reading into a Twitch live stream about Super Mario Maker. Or maybe not. Maybe I'm right.
I am so ready for this episode to go up, and you sound like you've been drinking all day, and I'm just here being like, yeah, The editing for this is going to be fantastic.
I actually didn't hear anything you just said because you cut out from the distortion.
Oh my god, please.
I think
right.
We're falling apart fast.
When you
Sorry, go ahead.
God, I'm just gonna say, when you get to editing this part, you're going to have like an epiphany. All right, it's fuck. You'll have an epiphany. I don't know what it's going to be on yet. Give me a second.
Okay.
The moral will be we don't record at 10 p.m. That's the moral of the story. For me?
You said the moral will be that we don't record yet.
Oh god. I'm so ready to hear this final product. All right, we have to do shout outs.
Okay. Before we end, I need to justify myself. A lot of the stuff that you all can hear, I can't hear. Like a lot of what Joe says, I can't hear, but I get the gist of it because I hear maybe every other word. So I am not. The extent of my idiocy is just the fact that it is 10 o'clock at night and it is the last day of classes. It is not because I can't understand what Joe is saying. That is on Discord. I don't know what my point there was.
Well,
was there? Sorry, can you carry me out of this podcast, Joe?
Yes, I can. Give us a rating and review on iTunes. Tell us how cogent we are in our episodes at reddit.com.
No idea what that word means.
Fiction. Fuck. What else? Email us at foolsandfiction@gmail.com. And finally, you can hear other podcasts on the William and Mary Podcasting Network at Spreaker.com/user/PNWM.
Correct.
Hooray!
Also, have a great summer.
All right. Oh yeah. It is officially the end of college outside of like exams. I think our next recording will be after we're done with exams.
Something like that. Yeah.
I might be crying. Who knows? All right. It is time. I must end you all. God, turn the podcast off.